Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is one for the history books. Today, we sit down with a living witness to defining moments of the 20th century. He is a very special guest, and I am honored to have had him here in the studio. During World War II, at just 15 years old, he lied about his age to enlist in the United States Navy. He got caught, went home, got some documents, forged a date, went back, and joined again. By the age of 17, he was storming the beaches of Peleliu, barely 5 feet tall and just over 100 pounds. During this offensive, over 1,700 Americans were killed and over 8,000 wounded, while over 10,000 Japanese were killed on this island. He was there on the front lines serving as a beachmaster. He fought again in Leyte, the first major offensive to liberate the Philippines from Japanese occupation. After World War II, he stood on deck as the U.S. tested atomic weapons at Bikini Atoll. Then, when war erupted again in Korea, he went back. After 2 wars, he came home to Galveston, Texas, built a life, raised a family, and gave back to his community. For decades, he coached generations of kids on the baseball field. His story is one of grit, sacrifice, and unwavering service to his community, his family, and his country. His name is Eddie Janek Sr., and at 98 years old, he's one of the few surviving World War II veterans left in the United States. To me, this is more than an interview. This is a first-hand account of American history, from the Great Depression to the beaches of the Pacific, to the legacy of service right here at home. Again, I am extremely honored to have Eddie Janek here in the studio to discuss his 98 years of life. And in this 2-hour sit-down, I believe we barely scratched the surface. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a review. It helps others discover stories just like these. And if you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to like the video, leave us a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. Now, without further ado, please welcome Mr. Eddie Janek to Galveston Unscripted. Well, I have to say, it is an absolute honor to have you in today. It really is.
Thank you. What are we going to talk about?
Well, I have a few things that I want to discuss with you.
Okay.
You know, when Kim reached out to me, she sent me a little list of all kinds of stuff that you have done throughout your life. A lot of those things not here on the island. A lot of those things in the Pacific Theater, Korea.
In the Philippines, Pacific, Korea, Japan, China.
Right.
I've been to all them places.
Man, you're 98 years old.
Yes. I joined the service at 15, and they caught me. Well, they were going to court-martial me. But then I talked them out of it. I was scared to death. Then I found my Catholic birth certificate, confirmation papers. I changed the 7 to a 6. I joined again.
Wow.
I went overseas. I had just turned 17. I was 5'4", and I weighed 114 pounds. And that's when I made my first invasion.
My goodness.
Yeah, the guys who were in my group said, "You don't have to worry, Eddie. The Japs can't even see you." I was that small.
Before we get to the Pacific,
Sure.
I want to. You were born in 1927.
Yes.
1927, and that is so you grew up in the Depression.
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, I was born and raised on a farm outside of a town called West. And back in those days, everybody was dirt poor. I didn't have a father, and my mother didn't have a car. So we really ate what we planted. And I had an aunt. I found out later on, she used to bring their leftovers to eat. But everybody was poor.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't any cars, or wagons and mules.
Was West a big town back then?
No, I think at that time it was like 2,500,
Okay.
and it's about the same now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Czechoslovakian community. Everybody there speaks Czech.
Mm-hmm.
So,
What was school like?
well, I went to a school called Alligator.
Alligator?
Alligator School is a two-room school that it had been named Snake Creek. There was a creek that ran by the school, and then somebody found an alligator, and so they named it Alligator School. With 2 rooms, had 4 classes in each room, and probably at the most 7 kids in each grade. And we had recess, we played. I walked to school every day. It was 3.25 miles. Along the way, I picked up a girl by the name of Teresa Raycheck. And then we walked another 1/4 mile, and we picked up 2 of the Zappalak brothers. So it was about 6 of us who wound up at school, walking, rain or snow.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had a half-sister. Yeah. My mother, her first husband died when my sister was 2 years old. And my mother had an affair with a married man. You got her pregnant. And so they got his brother to marry my mother to give me a name.
Oh, okay.
My name was actually Berenger, but my sister wouldn't go to school with me because I had a different name. So my mother sent me to school under the name of Janek. Now we pronounce it Janek here. And so when I came to Galveston at the age of 15, my uncle told my mother she ought to change my name to either Hickel, which was the family name, or to Janek. And so my mother changed it to Janek. And I'm no kin to the Janeks. I just have their name, that's all.
Interesting. So that pronunciation of Janek to Janek.
Yeah. I
What was
kept
that?
saying Janek when they came to Galveston, and everybody would spell it Y. I said, no, it's J. Well, it's Janek. That's okay. So I stayed with Janek. Yeah.
Is that a Czech name?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, my mother was born to 16 children. She had 15 brothers and sisters, and 2 of them died young, but 14 grew up and lived for a long time.
Wow. What year was she born?
She was born in 1897.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, my grandfather, he came from Czechoslovakia. And he was married. He had 2 children. Then his wife died. He married again, and then had 14 more children.
Man.
They were either good Catholics or oversexed, one of the 2.
There's a lot of crossover there, right?
No. I never knew my grandfather. He died the year I was born, but I knew my grandmother. And she couldn't talk English. In fact, I had two aunts who couldn't talk English,
Only Czech.
only Czech.
Did you learn to speak Czech?
Oh, I was fluent in Czech. Then I came to Galveston. When the service, I quit talking. Oh, I could read Czech, everything. In fact, I went to school to age of 7, and they sent me back home with a note said, Eddie has to learn to speak English. So she told her brothers and sisters, when you're around, son, Ed, they call me.
I'll adjust that for you. Yeah, we'll just bring it over a little bit so you have some more room. There you go.
And so I'd speak English. And that's how I learned to talk English.
Growing up in West during the Depression, you're speaking Czech,
Yes.
and you're going to school in a 2-room schoolhouse with
Yes.
7 other students for the most part.
Yeah.
What was the factor that led your family or your mother and your family down here to Galveston?
Well, my sister got married in 41, and I had 2 uncles who lived here. And they got my brother-in-law a job. And so he moved down here. My mother came here to take care of the baby. And when school was out in 42, I came here. So I have an 8th grade education.
So when you arrived at Galveston, you were 15.
Yes,
The same year that
yes,
you tried to join the Navy, or you did join the Navy.
yes. I got a job as all my young life. I lied about everything. I came to Galveston and I went to the Broadway drugstore. My sister had said, why don't you go there and try to get a job as a delivery boy? So I said, okay. So I went there and I told the man who owned it by the name of Williamson, and I told him I'd like to be a delivery boy, and he said, sure, do you know your way around town? I said, yes, sir. And my first delivery was at 1213 23rd Street. I always remember that. And I'm lost. I'm going east, should have been going west. There was a guy on a bicycle. I stopped and I said, I'm lost. He said, what you got? And I told him, you're going the wrong way. You got to go to 23rd Street. So he said, I'll show you. So he went with me, and then he said, you want me to stay with you all day? I said, yeah. His name was Joe Polkenhorn, and when he passed away, I was a pallbearer. That's how long he and I stayed friends.
Wow.
He taught me about Galveston. Then I needed, I think I made like 8 cents an hour. And I decided to go, somebody had said, go to Bob Daly's. He was between 21st, 22nd on Mechanic. And they said he owns a bowling alley. So I went there and I said, I'd like to be a pin sitter. He said, have you a set pins? I said, yes, sir. So I go in the back. He sent me in the back. There was a guy there by the name of Rufus Farino, who became a detective later in life. I'm looking around. He said, what's your name? I told him. He said, have you ever set pins? I said, no. I'm looking around. He said, have you ever been in a bowling alley? I said, no. He said, you kidding? I said, no. He said, you want me to teach you to set pins? I said, I sure would. Then I worked for the phone company years. Later, he was a detective. And when they had some people that had unlisted numbers who were criminals, he'd call me because I worked for the phone company. And he said, Joe Blow, that lives on XXX Street. But we don't have a phone number for him, or maybe an address. I'd get that for him. So it was like I say, I lied then, lied to get in the Navy, and I don't lie now. I don't have to.
Right. So you're 15 years old, you come to Galveston in 1942.
Yes.
Right? What prompted you to lie to join the Navy? What was pushing you into getting in the Navy?
Well, I didn't want to go back and pick cotton. So I saw all the sailors in Galveston. It was World War II, and I liked the uniform. So I joined the Navy. And then I got really patriotic. And I stayed in 4 years. I was in the Pacific and the Philippines. And in 46, I was on the atomic bomb test.
You were on the atomic bomb test?
Yes. And that was held at the island of Bikini. I saw the bomb go off July the 1st, and then the second one went off July the 25th. It's almost right around the corner.
Wow.
And then I got out. I got a job at the phone company. Then in 1950, I got called back to Korea. And I was in another 20 months. So all told in my young days, I was in the service. Most of that time was spent overseas.
Wow. I would like to look into, your service in the Pacific, and then jump into the atomic bomb test, and then Korea, kind of looking at each of those. So in the Pacific, so you were in for 4 years, so
Yes.
joined in 42.
Joined in 42. I was in Corpus. I kept putting in for sea duty. And June the 6th, I hitchhiked home June the 5th. And I went to Beaumont first. A friend of mine in the Navy, and I hitchhiked to Beaumont. And then I hitchhiked to Galveston. And it was June the 5th. I'm standing at about where Crystal Beach is now. And the mosquitoes were just horrendous. And a car comes up and man says, "Sailor, the mosquitoes are going to really hurt you tonight. Why don't you come stay at our house?" So I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Where you going?" I said, "Galveston." He said, "Well," he said, "I'm going to work in Galveston. That tide dry dock. I'll take you home." So I went. I was just tickled pink. They had a room downstairs, and I stayed in it. That next day we're going to Galveston, and on the radio it said that United States created D-Day, Normandy.
Right.
And when I got back to Corpus, the chief said, "Janek, you got your sea duty." I said, "What carrier am I going on?" He said, "You're not." And I said, "I'm not." He said, "No." And I said, "Where am I going?" He said, "Amphibs." And I said, "What's the amphibs?" He started laughing. He said, "You'll learn." And I went to San Bruno, California. And we stayed in, there was a racetrack there called Tan Ferrand. And it closed, and they had Italian prisoners in it, and they griped and bitched about it being kind of crappy living.
Right.
So they made it into a Navy camp that were trained by the Marines. So I wore the Marine greens for a year and a half.
Really?
Yeah. I was a beachmaster. Beachmasters are the first one on the beach. And they secure the beaches where the people who were going to come and invade. They had, on Peleliu, they had white 1, white 2, orange 1, orange 2, and orange 3. And I was on the orange 1. We went back. 2 of my sons took me back in 2005, and they had hired a guide. And we went there, and I was telling him I was on orange 1. Well, we went to orange 1, and he said, "What do you remember about it?" I said, "We were pinned down by a machine gun towards our left." He looked at me and he said, "The machine gun is still there. They preserved it. And nobody could have a party on the beaches of Peleliu. They were sacred." Quite. We landed. It was 118 degrees. And we each had 2 canteens strapped to us. Our carbine, a .45 pistol, and I weighed 114 pounds. And about noon, we ran out of water. So they signaled back to the ships we were out of water. Everybody was just really hurting. And they brought them. I was one of the first ones because we were the beachmasters. And I go and I fill my canteen up and take a drink and threw up. They had failed to clean the oil out of the drums. Everybody got sick with it. They signaled back, and they finally brought us some drinking water, finally.
So they were reusing gasoline cans or oil drums as water
oil
containers.
drums, yeah.
Oil drums as water containers.
Yeah. And I stayed on Peleliu until about right around the 1st of October. And they took my group and they put us on a ship, and we went to make the invasion of Leyte. That's in the Philippines, and that's where MacArthur came across. So we were, and that was October 20th. And then in December we went to another small island, and then we went to I think Leyte Gulf, and made an invasion there. And then I got put in the hospital for R&R. I guess they thought we were going goofy. And then there was a guy in the hospital who I knew from California, and he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to go back to being the beachmaster." He said, "Eddie, you don't want to do that. They're going to invade Japan next. They had just invaded Okinawa."
Right.
And he said, he's a pretty tough guy. "We have a boxing team. Why don't you request to stay here?" So I said, "It's a good idea." So I stayed. And in November, I shipped over for 2 years so I could go home early.
Mm-hmm.
And 4 of us that shipped up, our ship took us to Portland, Oregon, up to Columbia River. And then on December 26th, Pete Gray and I started hitchhiking from Portland, Oregon to go to Galveston. New Year's Eve in Kansas City. And then we started hitchhiking again January the 2nd. And we stopped in Oklahoma and Fort Worth, had a few drinks, and we got home around the 10th of January.
I'm sure being a service member, people were pretty
Oh, yeah.
welcoming and eager to give you a ride, huh?
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, yeah. When I was in Corpus, a guy was there ahead of me from Galveston. I didn't know him in Galveston. His name was Eggleston, Pinhead Eggleston. And December the 25th, 1943, he came to my barracks. Well, no, he came Christmas Eve night, and he said, "Why don't you and I go to Galveston?" I said, "I don't have any money." He said, "I don't either. We'll hitchhike." So I said, "Okay." I never had a hitchhike before. So we hitchhiked. We got out of Corpus about 35, 40 miles. Guy dropped us off, and we're standing on the highway, and it's around noon. And then there was a house about a mile off the highway, and a car leaves that house, comes towards us, and the guy said, "The sailors My wife and I have two sons in the Army, and they're overseas. We have a big Christmas dinner. Why don't you all come and join us? It's absolutely fun. Had a country Christmas dinner. All the trimmings. When we got through, he took us back to the road, and we caught a ride with a couple, and they were going to Houston. And the man said, "Where y'all going?" They said, "We're going to Galveston." I said, "Okay." So when he got to Houston, he drove to the bus station. He went and he came back. "Here's y'all 2 tickets to go to Galveston."
Wow.
That's how gracious the people were for people in uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
It was, you'd hitchhike and you stand out there maybe half hour and somebody would pick you up and then talk about where you're from and all that stuff. It was a good history lesson about how people acted back in those days.
Right.
Everybody, if there was a blue star in a people's window, it meant that they had a son in the service. If there was a gold star, it meant that they had a son killed in the war. And yeah, you looked at that, and I never thought what it would do to my mother, but here my mother has one son, and he's stupid enough to join the Navy and worry her to death. I never thought about that until 4 or 5 years later when I kind of got more grown up about all the misery I created for her. You know, sometimes when we were in combat, if we couldn't write a letter for a week or two, and sometimes if I wrote a letter, she got it maybe a month later or so. That was a month but no mail, and she had no idea if her son had died or not. So, and I realized in later years how much misery I created for her.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. So,
what kind of vessel were you on?
well, I wasn't on a vessel in World War II.
Okay.
I was a beachmaster.
Right.
And after World War II, I signed over for 2 years. I got on the ship and we went to the atomic bomb test.
Right.
I was on a troop transport. That APA, it was attack troop transport. If we carried all those Higgins boats,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'd transport the Marines or the soldiers to the island. And I stayed on that for quite a while, and then I got on a cruiser, and then a destroyer, and then I decided to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And after I got back in, I was on a APA, attack transport. And we transported troops to Korea or Japan, Korea, Japan, Korea. And I was on that right about 20 months.
20 months.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the atomic bomb testing. Was it testing they were doing in
Yes.
the Bikini Atoll?
Yes. I had no idea, but what happened, they wanted to test the bomb if there were a bunch of ships, what it would do, say in a fleet of ships. And so the first bomb they dropped from the sky. The second bomb they detonated it underwater. And they told us, don't look at the blast. Well, of course, you're 18 years old and you don't care. So all of us saw the bomb go off with the fire shooting out of the clouds. And it looked like a big wave was heading towards us. And then when they dropped the one, then when they set the one under the sea, well, then they had sailors who brought the ships out there, just a skeleton crew, and all those ships would come on ships like ours who could handle troops. And so seeing all those ships being blown up, you could see at times a ship in the air is how potent that bomb was.
How far away were you and the guys?
Probably 8 miles.
8 miles.
Yeah, but you could see it.
Oh yeah.
And they told us, don't look at it, it could blind you. And you being on your atomic bomb test, you could become sterile. Well, I had 3 kids, so I wasn't sterile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it was quite a sight. We went there. We went to Bikini. I think it was latter part of April. And we got there, and we started taking troops on board who brought the ships there to be bombed. So we had a lot of people on board the ship who were actually troops.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of gambling going on and all that type of stuff. We had a boxing team, and the supply officer who's in charge of the boxing team, he came to me, he said, I see where you were boxing. Huh? I said, yes. So he said, if we're going to start up a team, would you be in charge of it? I said, sure. So I was kind of in charge of the boxing team.
Man.
Oh no, I'm sorry. This was on the atomic bomb test when he asked me if I'd box on the team. I'm 18, and I said sure. And so we had some real good guys on it. I fought as a featherweight.
Mm-hmm.
I weighed about 119 pounds at that time. And all the guys who were on the boxing team, our captain was gung-ho about a boxing team. And after each fight, if it was on our ship, he'd have the cooks grill steaks for the opposing team and us. And if you won, you got a fountain pen.
Oh.
Back then, the Parker fountain pens were just a thing to get. So I had a couple, 3 fountain pens. So, and during the Korean War, I was in charge of all the ship supply stuff. The exchange where you bought tobacco and stuff. Laundry, barber shop, cobbler shop. And it was that. And I was there, and we had been at sea for probably a couple of months.
Mm.
And the word came that we were going to Hong Kong.
Mm.
So we went, pulled into Hong Kong, and all these people who sold suits or tailor-made suits for $10, they all came on board, and I got this one guy I started talking to, and he said, "You want name of a good hotel?" I said, "Yeah." So he gave me the card of this hotel in Hong Kong. I still have the card. And so a guy by the name of Parker and I, and we passed the word to other guys. So we went there, and it cost us $35. And Parker and I were in rooms alongside of each other. And we're going back and forth to each room, hitting the juice. And all of a sudden there's police whistles and sirens going off. And I told Parker, I said, "They're raiding us." So I said, "Come on." We went down the engine room, and I saw the engine room as I was going up to my room, so I knew where it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we hid in the engine room. Everybody was moved out. The hotel was empty. So I told Parker, I said, "Come on." So we go to the desk, and we tell the guy we want our money back. And of course, all of a sudden, he can't speak English. So I grabbed him, and I pulled him in. I had a church key, those things you open cans with.
Uh-huh.
I put it to his throat, and I said, "I want my money." I called boss. Well, they had 2 doors, big doors, and they had, I guess, the windows about that wide on each door where you could see outside. And Parker was by the door, and he said, "Janek." I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "The cops are here." The guy had called the police. And there were 12 Jeeps that pulled in. Guys with machine guns sitting in the back. He said, "What you gonna do?" He said, I said, "We don't have any choice. Drop that bar and that bolt at the doors." So this English detective was tall, slim built, a mustache. He knocks on the window. Hey, Mike, let me in. What's going on? And I'm talking to him through the door, screaming.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, let me in. So I said, drop your gun. So he dropped the gun. I said, now drop the gun that's on your leg.
Uh-huh.
So he dropped it. I let him in. He said, what are you doing, Mike? And I explained to him. I said, no, it's your fault because y'all have a deal going with the hotel. You get sailors and you bring them here and then rate it. And he and I, we wasn't screaming at each other. We were arguing back and forth. He said, well, let me go back outside. I said, you ain't going outside. What? I said, you and I and Park are going to stay here for 3 days if we have to. I want my $35. And Parker wants his $35. He said, Mike, you got to be crazy. I said, well, I just don't like getting screwed around. You get our $35 and you can go free. So he goes to the desk and he brings each of us our $35 and he said, well, get in the Jeep with me. I said, no, I'm not going to jail. He said, Mike, you got a lot of guts. I said, I don't have any choice. So he said, you won't go to jail. I said, well, we should shake hands on it. So we shook hands. He said, you ride with me? I said, okay. So we're going, and we're changing a few words. He said, Mike, and I do have a lot of ribbons. He said, you know, I like you. Like I told you before, you have a lot of guts. And I said, well, I appreciate that. So we get Hong Kong was half British, half Chinese. And I'm saying half of it had the old Chinese buildings, the other half had the modern stuff. So he stopped there in the British part. He shook my hand. He said, I can tell you, I like you. He said, just do me one favor. I said, sure. He said, don't create any more problems. I said, oh. So I'm probably the only sailor ever in the Navy that held up a hotel in China.
Oh my goodness.
And Parker and I stayed friends until he passed away about 2.5 years ago.
Mm.
And we went to all the reunions that thing. We stayed real close friends.
Mm-hmm.
It was a trying time. We had a lot of fun. It was kind of shaky at times.
Right.
But overall, I loved the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
You had the time to get up, and you had the time that you could go to sleep. They gave you 3 meals. They check your teeth and your heart everything. It was good living
Right.
after being on the farm picking cotton. It was pretty good living.
What a contrast.
Yeah, was big contract.
Right.
Yeah, so I stayed in I stayed in reserves. Is why I got called back to Korea. And after Korea, I decided to stay and retire. They had a good retirement. Their hospitalization retirement really takes care of you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't pay for any drugs. So I stayed for a reason. And the reason I was so gung-ho about staying and getting retirements, I saw my uncles as they got 65 and they couldn't work the farms.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have the money to, and there was no assisted living stuff back then. And I saw them how they had to depend on their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's not going to happen to me.
Right.
So I'm 98. I still live in my house. I still drive. I just drove to San Antonio and back about a month ago.
Oh, wow.
So I know that this year, more than a half, is probably going to be my last driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
I think my luck is running out.
You sound like a pretty lucky man.
No, I've been lucky.
Fortunate. When you were a beachmaster,
Yes.
you know, you're going on to Peleliu and Leyte.
Yeah.
What do you remember about, you know, you mentioned you were pinned down by a machine gunner, but what are some of those more things you remember about storming the beaches?
I never heard of a Leyte, and they told us that we're going to Leyte. It'd be maybe a day or two mop up. That they bombed it for 3 days. MacArthur wanted to take a Leyte because there was a airstrip on Leyte, and Leyte was about 800 miles from the Philippines. Admiral Halsey, he didn't want to screw with Leyte, so we'll just starve them out. Well, what happened is there were 10,300 Japanese on the island 2.5 miles by 5 miles. And they were in caves. It was the first time United States attacked the island where they lived underground.
Mm.
They had built barracks underground, chow hall underground, a small hospital underground. So when we went in, they had people there on the beaches giving us a lot of problems. And then we got stuck on Orange 1, and the Marines had landed on WWII came through okay, and they circled around and kind of saved us. And like I said, we had the machine gun. But what happened, MacArthur wanted the island, and I'm trying to remember exactly the exact count, but there were like 1,200 Marines and sailors who were killed. And there were over 10,000 Japanese killed.
Mm.
You could walk along and you could see every place you looked there was dead people. And it was so hot they swelled up. And the blowflies were about twice that size. And so it was a screw-up on the United States parts that got all those Marines and sailors killed. And it was a hush-hush invasion. And 6, 7 months later, guys had asked me, "Where you been?" I said, "I was on the Leyte." Yeah, Peleliu.
Peleliu.
And they said, "Where's that?" The United States hushed it up. Nobody knew about Peleliu for a long time. And then the people started talking about it. And how many people were dead? Can you imagine 2.5 by 5 miles? 14,000 people laying dead. It was a mess.
Were you there for the entire campaign?
No, I got pulled out right around the 1st of October.
Okay.
And by then, they were mopping up on the other side of the island. The Marines were on White 1, White 2, Orange 1, 2, and 3. And on the other side of the island, the Army invaded that part, and they had Purple 1 and Purple 2. So there were actually 7 beaches that were invaded.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it was a guy by the name of Pulver. He wrote a book about it. He was a Marine. He went to college and he became a writer, and he wrote a book about it.
Mm-hmm. What is it like for? Because you were 17 at the time of Peleliu.
Yeah.
What is it like from the briefing to the moment you land on the beach?
Yeah, he told us before we went in that it was going to be a mop-up. There wasn't hardly any Japs on the island. And when we got in the Higgins boats, all the beachmasters, someone went to White 1, White 2, Orange 1.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, you couldn't see the island. It was so much smoke from the firing. All the ships were shooting, and then they had airplanes dropping bombs. So going in, well, you couldn't see the island until you got about 50 yards away. And then you encountered the machine gun fire and the small rocket fires. A few of the Higgins boats just got blown up. And there were approximately 30 people in each boat. Yeah, but the beachmasters, when we went in, there were like 12 of us to each boat. But for a 17-year-old kid, we were all scared, but we were more concerned about staying alive. And we had Marines who were in charge of us, all the sailors. And they, keep your head down, don't stick your head up. We were behind a big sandbar. And I remember one of the guys stuck his head up to see what's going on. You got shot. Right there. And then there were two guys who wound up in Galveston, plus me. Three of us who were on Peleliu.
Wow.
Yeah. One, he worked at UTM. He worked at the Maritime Academy. He was in charge of things like oysters and all that. And during the war, he was a corpsman. And he helped quite a few guys survive.
What was his name?
Sammy Ray.
Sammy Ray, Dr. Sammy Ray.
Yeah. Oh, you might have heard of his name.
I sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he and I would get together and shoot the bull. He'd invite me to his house. And he'd sit out there and open the oysters. And he and I would eat the oysters.
That's great.
Yeah. It was quite a deal.
Wow.
And then we went to Leyte. We had a pretty good encounter landing. But the Japs had moved back into the jungles and wanted us to have to come in the jungles. And back in those days, all the houses were bamboo houses. There was no wooden structures. It was kind of old-timey.
Right.
We thought, sure, going into Leyte, there'd be houses we could hide behind or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't happen. It was all bamboo huts.
Concealment, but no real cover, huh?
No, that's right.
Wow. How long was that offensive?
I was on Leyte from October the 20th till around January the 4th. And then they pulled us out to go to that small island we went to, and I forget the name of it. And then we got through there, and we went to Lingayen Gulf.
Mm-hmm.
and we made that invasion. And then they shipped a lot of us out. They shipped about 4 of us to a place called Samar in the Philippines, to a hospital called Fleet Hospital 114. It was a 3,000-bed hospital that they had built one on Samar, and they built one on Guam for the people who were going to get hurt going in to make the invasion of Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But then Truman, he pulled the trigger on the 2 bombs, and that ended the war in Japan.
How did you hear about the first 2 nuclear bombs, Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Oh, I was in that Fleet Hospital, and of course, they got through teletype and stuff all the news, and that spread the news out, and we heard that they had dropped the 1 bomb, and I forget the next day or so, they dropped the other one. And everybody was cheering and hollering and carrying on. That we really felt like the war was going to be over.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was in August that they claimed VJ, the victory in Japan. And that's when everything quieted down, and people, guys who you could go home if you had enough points.
Mm-hmm.
For each day that you were overseas, you got points. For each day you was in combat, you got points. So guys who were there from 1942 to 45 were the ones who got to go home first.
Right.
And so Pete and I, Gray, we decided to ship over. Then we know we're going to get to go home.
Right. I think Lisa has a question, actually.
So you mentioned you landed on Leyte October 20th. And
Yes.
General MacArthur also landed on October 20th and gave his famous speech from the beach. Did
Yes.
you see that? Or
I didn't see him make the speech, but some guys who did told us about it. Yeah, we were saying he walks on in, and like I say, most of the Japanese had moved inland where they could be more effective. But we did have some fire, but it wasn't anything like Peleliu. Yeah, Leyte it was, I thought sure we were going to see a big city. They talked about it. It was all bamboo huts. And there was a movie that came out years later with Robert Taylor. And it showed Leyte and all the bamboo buildings and stuff.
You spent years in the Pacific and then moved on.
Sorry.
You spent years in the Pacific,
Yes.
in the Navy, and then you go to Korea, You hold up a hotel during the Korean War in Hong Kong. What year did you, and you witnessed, I can't miss, you witnessed atomic testing in Bikini Atoll.
Yes.
What is the most memorable thing about the atomic testing that you remember? Besides being told not to look at it, and of course, as a kid, you gotta peek through, you know?
Yeah. I guess the thing that stood out the most, how devastating it was. My God, just clouds were 3-4 miles up in the air with still fire shooting out of the clouds, water in the clouds. It was just amazing and scary. It was scary when you saw those water churning towards us. We would have thought that we may get caught in that, but by the time it got to us, it was pretty well calmed down.
Mm-hmm. Were you given any protective equipment, goggles or anything?
No.
Just your hands.
They said, don't open your eyes. Well, the guys that went on the ships who were blown up, and they had animals on those ships.
They had animals on them?
Yeah. Goats and sheep and mice, rats. And those guys that went on, they all had suits. But they still, some contacted cancer.
From the radiation?
Yeah.
What about, you mentioned you were about 8 miles away?
I'd say 6 to 8.
6 to 8, okay.
Yeah.
Any concerns? I mean, I know they mentioned you might become sterile.
Yeah.
But any concerns about radiation more than just being sterile with the guys you were with?
You know, us guys who were the working class on the ships really didn't know much about radiation. We found out about it later on when they talked about going on board those ships and checking radiation, how long it stayed after the test and everything.
What about the sound?
We really didn't hear much of the sound.
Really?
It was, we heard boom.
Right.
But then the thing that you got so engrossed in looking at the aftermath of the bomb, just amazing.
Any shockwaves?
It was some, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I got pictures. They gave each of us a book who was on the test, and my book got washed away in ink. But I do have pictures that guys got from other guys. Back then, very few sailors had a camera.
Right.
We just didn't have them. But in Korea, I took a lot of pictures, and they all got wiped out in ink. I got a Navy room downstairs, and I got all the planes that I saw during the war. Got them off the ceiling, and I got all my medals. My medals got wiped out, and then Tammy Loba,
Wonderful woman.
yeah, who graduated from Atlanta, and I got to know her real well. They found and I had them in a shadow box, and they found them on the beach or Pelican Island, and they were showing them to Tammy, and she said, "Those are Eddie Janek's medals." And so it was on national TV that a war hero medals were found 5 miles away on the island. And so it was the Chronicle who came and took pictures. And I'm trying to think who was the president of the Maritime Academy at that time.
In 08.
Well, that's the Maritime
Right.
Academy.
Was it Bowen Lofton?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
And Tammy, she was in on the pictures. I still see her quite a bit. She comes to the Propeller Club of functions. I like Tammy. She's a good German.
She's great.
Yeah.
She's great. So your medals got washed away during Hurricane Ike.
Yeah.
September 13th, 2008, right?
Yeah.
How long after they were lost, how long did it take for them to be found?
About 4 days.
Oh, that's pretty quick, actually.
Yeah. Phones were all bad back then.
Uh-huh.
And as soon as she saw them, what they called the Chronicle, and then Channel 13, I think, came down, and they presented them to me. The bottom part of the medals had got water on it. So, and I had those done by a place in South Carolina. So I sent it back to them, and I told them what happened. And they redid everything and didn't charge me a dime. People still had fond memories of servicemen.
Yeah, I would say so.
We went through a thing like Nam. Those guys got spit on and everything, which was sad.
Right.
But when we came into Portland, up the Columbia River, and they had bands playing God Bless America and all the patriotic songs. And then in Korea, we came back, and we were kind of forgotten. And then Nam, it was terrible for the returning servicemen. And now it's back to being good for servicemen.
Right.
And it should be. Those are the people who... So, yeah, and I came back and got a job at a phone company, and fell in love, got married, got involved in politics and the sailing ship Alyssa, all that stuff. And I was on the Airport Commission, Wharves Board, Galveston Historical District. I did a lot of things in Galveston.
Were you hit by or run over by a barge in Galveston too? What was the
Yeah,
deal with that?
I was working in Bay City with phone company, and he called me and said, "We got a problem. The submarine cable going to Pelican from Galveston sprung a leak, and I need you." It was just two of us who knew how to work on submarine cable. So I came back. I'm on one barge, and Slim is on the other barge, with guys helping us, and we had to cut that section out. I took my hacksaw and I was slicing and hanging on. When I cut the cable, I fell overboard, and I'm under the barge. There's a tide. I got my big lineman boots on. It's cold. And I'm saying, my God, don't let me die. And I keep scratching. And there were a lot of barnacles. And they helped me. And I knew I was going to drown. And my hands found the edge of the barge. I put my hand up, and a friend of mine, Roy Lee Dixon, was there looking over. He saw my hand, he grabbed me, and they pulled me on the barge. I said, "Shoo." So I said, I can't believe I served in 2 wars and I come home drowned.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, I've been putting the book together, and I'm trying to find somebody who can put it all together for me.
You need a book.
Yeah.
You deserve a book. Your life does, for sure.
Everybody says, when I tell them about the baseball career I had, all the things I done, I like the Alyssa.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the board of the Alyssa, and I was also a crew member. So I got to sail the first 5 times that they sailed. I was a crew member climbing the riggings. And height really didn't bother me because I climbed poles for 21 years. So being up 35 foot was a problem for me. You get used to it.
Right.
So
a mast on an 1877 ship is no
Yeah.
problem, right?
Yeah.
Especially on a historic vessel like that.
Oh,
There's nothing like it.
no. Just really enjoyed being part of the crew.
Mm-hmm. It's the people that make it, right?
Yeah.
It's the
that's
people.
right.
Right. How'd you meet your wife?
In 1948, I got out of service in 47. In 48, a girl asked me to take her to the 1948 prom, Ball High School. So I said, okay. Well, we went, and the prom dance was held there at the Menard Park Recreation Center. And we went there, and I saw there was about 6 guys cluttered. And I asked my date, I said, "What's going on there?" She said, "Oh, there in the middle of that crowd is Doris Dinky. Everyone in town sweats her. And I saw her, true story. I got a crush on her. I said, my God, that is gorgeous. And I didn't see her again until a friend of mine who was my helper at the phone company. He was in the hospital, and I go there to see him, and Doris and her boyfriend were there. And so I got to meet her, talk to her. And then in 1950, I get called to service. And I hadn't seen Doris but twice. And I get out of the service. Oh, I come home on leave in 51. And Pat Parsley and her at the bowling alley on 24th Street. We're drinking a beer. And Doris comes and I said, Pat, is that dinky girl? She said, yeah. I said, man, I'd sure like to date her. He said, she ain't gonna date you. I said, why? He said, you're always in a fight, some beer joint. She ain't gonna screw with some rowdy guy like you. I said, okay. So I get out of the Navy and I get my own apartment. A friend of mine's girlfriend, he's in the service, and she asked me to take her to a birthday party. I said, okay. So I took her to the birthday party at the Sea Breeze. It was a big party. And Doris was there. So in the course of the night, I asked her to dance. She said, sure, we danced. And I asked her again a little later. And I said, would you go out with me? She said, sure. So I took her out on March the 17th, 1952. And on May the 17th, 1953, I married her.
Oh my goodness.
And I was in love. I'm saying in love, this heavy, heavy crush on the girl that I'd seen twice in my lifetime. And then I see her to dance, ask her to dance. And that was it. All those guys, all the guys who were in high school were all the football players. I was just saying, how in the shit did she fall in love with some little guy like you? I said, the good Lord smiled at me. So we wound up with 3 kids. And then 91, she started having, I have a son who's a doctor. And he said, Dad, he said, have you noticed Mom is kind of forgetting stuff? I said, yeah. So anyway, he set up a meeting for us at the Baylor School of Medicine Alzheimer's Center. And she was just furious. I take her once, maybe twice a week. And I'd take her and I'd run tests and give her questions she had to answer and all kind of stuff. And after about a month, we went there and they said, we want to talk to you in the office. I thought, oh. And they said, you have Alzheimer's. We're going home that afternoon. She said, honey, I want to apologize. I said, for what? She said, raising hell. Wait, each time we came up here, she said, well, you did it because you love me. I said, yeah. And then she fell in 2007. And that's when I hired a lady to help take care of her. And then, well, she didn't fall then. And she went to live with my son Kyle, who's a doctor in Austin. And my house got downstairs, just got wiped out. So I just let her stay in Austin. And then she was there for 3 months. I finally got the house where it was livable. I brought her back and she fell. And she wound up in the hospital and she broke her hip. And then I had to put her in a nursing home there at the end of the Seaball. And she stayed there for 2 months, a little over 2 months. And then I decided to take her home. And that's when she really faded. And she got to the point she didn't know who we were. And then she laid in that bed for 7 years and 8 months, never said a word.
Wow.
And I had a hospital bed brought in, and I had the one lady I hired, and then I knew it was too much for one. So I went to one of these places that does health care, and so I got them to assign somebody doors 3 days a week. And the lady I had was 4 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2015, January 23rd, she passed away. But we were married 63 years.
63 years. Wow.
Yeah. And all because I saw a girl in 1948. Saw her 3 times and asked for a date.
Incredible.
And wound up being married 63 years.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
We had a good wedding.
Mm-hmm. And 3 kids, too.
3 kids. Yeah, I've had an interesting life.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe a dummy comes to Galveston. I came to Galveston, my sister was living at 21st and Avenue L. And she drew me a map and sent it to me. So when I got off the train, I walked to 21st Street. I turned right, and I got to about a post office, and there were a couple of guys there, and I asked them if I was going right, and they said, yeah. They became good friends of mine years later. One of them said, Eddie, you was the goofiest looking guy we ever saw. Straw hat, beat up cowboy boots, and a guitar across your back. I said, I guess I was pretty country looking. Yeah, you were a joke. That I said, we laughed about you when you left us. So.
Yeah, coming from West Texas to the
Yeah.
big city of Galveston back then, right?
Oh, you know, all the lights and everything. Gee, many Christmas. I said, hell, I ain't going back. And I didn't. I go home every year. I used to go twice a year, family reunions. At one time, I had 52 cousins. Now I got 5 cousins still left. I'm the oldest. And the next ones are upper 90s.
Wow.
Yeah, our family had a long livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good, or I wouldn't have been here.
Right. And to be able to tell these stories, which is
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah.
Do you have any veteran friends who you still get together with? Guys you served with?
No. There's only two World War II guys in town. One of them is a guy by the name of Bunty Glasses. He and I play dominoes at around 2:30 every Friday at the country store.
Mm-hmm.
The country store is on 14th and
Mm-hmm.
14th and Mechanic. He's 102. He'll be 103 August the 25th. And he and I, we play dominoes every Friday.
I know where I'm going to be on Friday at 2:30.
Man, you're welcome to come. We laugh and play dominoes. I'll drink a couple of beers or a couple of drinks. But it's fun to see two guys who equal 200 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he's 102. I'm 90, so that's 200 years on this earth.
That's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
2 centuries of knowledge and experience and history.
He was in World War II. He was in Burma. Then he left Burma. He went to the Philippines. So, yeah, he's still pretty sharp.
Maybe I should get him in here. Or bring a microphone down to the country store.
There you go.
That's even better.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
See, we laugh and cut up and just have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we enjoy being alive.
Right.
Yeah.
You have a baseball field, or fields named after you, don't you?
Yeah. I got a building named after me in Santa Fe.
Okay.
And I have a field that's named after me. The whole complex on 53rd Street. There's 3 baseball fields, a couple of softball fields, playground equipment, soccer field. It's a big park.
Right.
And I just got that name after me.
That's where my son plays t-ball.
Is it really?
Yeah, yeah, at your field.
Yeah. When I coached a Little League, there were 3 leagues, and there were 4 teams in each league. And it was so good that we were cutting players to get to 15. My grandson played Little League about 10 years ago. And there were 3 teams in the city of Galveston. 2 of the teams had 9 ball players, and 1 team had 12. And if somebody was missing, they would borrow one of the team's 12 players and play. This thing that's called something, and you pay to have your son play. That really ruined Little League.
Right. Select ball. Is it select or?
Yeah,
Select,
that's it.
Yeah.
A select league.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it kind of ruined the kids playing against each other and all the camaraderie and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
How long did you coach for?
I coached Little League 4 years. I coached Pony League 4 years. I coached Coat League 2 years. Then I coached American Legion 24 years.
24 years. Wow.
I won 5 state championships. I went to the World Series 1 year.
What year was that?
1972.
Oh my gosh.
We wound up 3rd in the United States.
Man, that's something to brag about right there.
That was so great.
Yeah.
You know. We went to Danville, Virginia.
Okay.
And played.
Uh-huh.
We were there for 5 days. And we ran out of pitchers. And that really hurt. You know, I look back and I probably coached well over 1,000 young men.
Uh-huh.
And I still have a lot of them who keep in touch. Your Richard DeVries, he played ball for me. Darryl Spumani, Yarborough, then I had 2 guys who went pro, Albert Schultz and Adrian Devine. Those are the 2 that went pro.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun. I started coaching, I didn't have any boys. And then I wound up at 3. I coached, my 2 oldest boys played Little League and Pony. And then they went to tennis. My youngest son, Craig, he stayed with baseball through high school.
98 years old. You've seen so much throughout your life.
Oh, yeah.
A world war, one forgotten war, as they call the Korean War, right?
Yeah.
We've discussed quite a bit of your life. I know one thing I didn't really we haven't gotten into yet is your kind of career as a commissioner.
Oh, yeah.
You got any? What is a commissioner, and what was your role there?
A county commissioner is probably one of the most important jobs in the state. A commissioner, because he controls all the money in the county.
Mm-hmm.
The sheriff's money. Any judge, district attorney, everybody in the county answers to the county commissioners. We control the purse.
Mm-hmm.
In 1989, latter part, Joe Max Taylor, who was the sheriff, him and Peleliu, and Phil was the county auditor, and they came to me and said, "We want you to run for county commissioner." And I said, I don't want to run for county commissioner. And they said, "We need you. Jan Coggeshall is going to run. And you're the only guy in town who can beat her." So I called my friend Frankie Williamson, and I said, "You want to run for county commissioner? I'll help you." No. I called Rudy Dykeman, asked him, "Why didn't he run?" He said, "No." So they come back and talk to me, and I'm saying no. And Michael Hyma is at my house. He and his wife came by. I needed some soil. And I talking to him, and we're sitting out there on a concrete bench, drinking a beer. And I said, what do you think about me running for county commissioner?" He said, "Sounds good." Reached in his pocket. He gave me 3 $100 bills. He said, "That's your first donation." My wife said, "Now, what are you going to do?" I said, "I got to run."
You got to.
So I ran Walter Hall, who was the big vote getter in the county, who owned the Dickinson Bank.
Mm-hmm.
And so Chuck Wilson, who was the tax collector at the time, he took me to see Walter Hall. Walter Hall said, "You know, Eddie, I can't help you. I'm helping Jan Coggeshall." He said, "The best thing that you can do is just drop out. You can't win. Whoever I back, they win." I said, "Mr. Hall, I done signed up to run. I got to run." "Well, I'm just letting you know I think you're a nice guy, but you can't win if I'm not backing you." Anyway, there were 9 of us who wound up in the race. And Jan and I wound up in a runoff. And I beat her 2-1.
Oh my goodness.
And so I became a commissioner. And I I won election in April, the runoff. And so Judge Holbrook, who backed Jan, came to me and said, "Why don't you come to the meetings? I'll include you on everything because you can be going in January the 1st. And I said, "Thanks." So I started going to the meetings to catch up on things. There was a guy by the name of Eddie Janek, a Piggies, who was commissioner of Precinct 3. Eddie Barr was, no, Billy Jack was 4, Precinct 4. Eddie Barr was Precinct 1. I was Precinct 2. And Wayne Johnson was a Precinct 3. And those, and Judge Holbrook. So I learned a lot just by going to the meetings.
Right.
But a county commissioner, they control everything in the county. And nobody knows that, but some people who know the county know that it's an important position. When you control the money, you're it.
Right.
And Holbrook he stayed 5 years, and then he retired. And I helped Jim the Yarborough to get elected. And he stayed on for quite a while. Then Wayne Johnson passed away after I was in the commissioner's seat for about 5 years. Wayne passed away. He was the only black commissioner we had at that time. And then when Wayne died, Yarborough nominated Holmes, Steve Holmes, as a commissioner. And he's still there. But I don't think he can win again. They changed the voting around. And there's a lot of politics.
Of course, it's politics, right?
Unreal.
How long were you a commissioner?
16 years.
16 years.
And the reason I decided not to run again, my wife was real ill. And I felt I needed to spend more time with her alone. So I retired, and then 8 years later, they named that the building in Santa Fe, Eddie Janek County Commissioner Building. And I have to tell you this, in 1946, when I came back from the atomic bomb test, war was over, and went to San Francisco to help our ship, putting it dry dock to take care of. And so the Navy came and said, y'all can wear civilian clothes, but you can't bring them on the ship. And back then they had lockers, maybe 20 lockers in a small building. and you rented lockers. So I decided to have a picture taken and sent to my mother in civilian clothes. So I go and I have the picture taken. And a couple of guys, after 4 or 5 days, said, "Have you seen your picture?" And I said, "No." Well, they said it's in that studio on Market Street. And I said, "That's where I had my picture taken." Anyway, I made a point to go by there. I'm in the middle, and they got 6 girls' pictures. These are all 8 by 10s surrounding me. And I said, "Oh my God." And I hung out at this club called Bimbos. And they had a story about it in the Look magazine. It's where there was a girl in a pool in the basement. Through mirrors, they brought her into a fish tank on the bar, and you could talk to her. Anyway, it was a real nice place. So I'm there a couple of times, and there was a guy sitting by me. He said, "You know, I've been looking at you. You're the guy in the studio, right?" And I had my uniform. I said, "Yes." He said, "I was admiring that. You're a good-looking guy." I said, "Thank you." Anyway, a couple nights later, I'm in there with one of the guy off the boxing teams, and he said, "Okay, if I talk to you for a few minutes?" I said, "Sure." He gave me a card, said MGM Studios.
Uh-huh.
He was the head scout for talent at MGM. He said, "I'd like to give you a screen test." I said, "No." I stuttered. He said, "We'll take care of that." He said, "I want to tell you, you're the best looking damn thing I've ever seen." He said, "You're good looking. You're going to be a hit." And then the guys on the ship find out about it, and they're harassing me.
Of course.
The movie star, oh my God. So he brought his wife in, and she talking to me. And our ship is about to pull out, and I told him I couldn't do it. And I got into a depression about 3.5 years ago. And part of the problem was I'm seeing all these movies made in 48, 50, 55. Right. And I'm saying, shit, I could have been in these movies. And it kind of depressed me. And like I talked to a good friend of mine, and I said, you know, I shouldn't be depressed. I married the prettiest girl in town. I got 3 good kids. I've had a great life in Galveston. I know practically everybody. And I said, I have a beautiful wife, 3 kids, and I'm happy.
Right.
So, but it really bugged me when I saw these shows were made would have been in my era.
Uh-huh.
So
Man.
anyway, that was,
Well, that leads perfectly into my last question for you. After living for 98 years, after all these stories you've just told me for a couple hours here, what is your proudest accomplishment?
I think raising 3 sons to be good citizens and not getting on drugs or alcohol or anything. I think that's the main thing. And then I'm happy about helping people. I worked for a phone company, and when I retired, I got $30,000. I called a friend of mine who worked for Jones Stocks and Bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him I had $30,000 and never had invested in anything. Could he help me? He said, sure. So it turned into a good deal. I built a house on Channelview Drive, and I sold it for $123,000 profit. I put that in stocks every year, and then I put money in as the first one was born. I made a 529. I put 5,000, and then every year on his birthday, he got 5,000. Sometimes during the year, I threw an extra 5. And I did that to all 6 kids. 4 of them have graduated from college, paid for about a 529. And I've got one who just went into his senior year in college. And I have a granddaughter who's going into her sophomore year in high school. So all those, to me, I was so broke as a kid that we used to fight over pennies. 5 cents to buy you a doubled-up ice cream cone. And so I felt that here I help, and I give away probably right at 10,000 to 11,000 a year to St. Jude, Shriners for cancer, doggy stuff, SPCA, the veteran stuff, tunnels to towers, all that stuff. I donate to them twice a year, except 6 of them I donate every month. It comes out of my credit card, and that's I'm saying 6, 1, 2, and that's about 9 of them who I do that to. So if people say, people who know, why do you do that? I said, what am I going to do with my money? I'm happy. I got everything I want. So why not spread it around? And that's one of the things I'm proud that I haven't been stingy and trying to hoard money to where I'm a multi-millionaire.
Right.
It's it's rewarding to give. And and I'm happy that my grandkids all have gone through college through a 529 program. So, and I don't have any great grandchildren, so.
Not yet, huh? Well, Mr. Janek, thank you so much for coming in today. I really, really appreciate you coming in the studio, sitting down, telling me about a little bit about your 98 years. I'm sure we just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But it's an absolute honor to officially meet you
Well, thank you.
and have you come in today. So
It was a pleasure meeting y'all. I've never seen a podcast in my life, and I don't do Facebook. I should learn. I'm just kind of old-fashioned, I guess you could say. I had my cell phone, and a few years ago, I texted my son, Kyle, in Austin. He called me back and said, "Dad, well, what's wrong? What's wrong?" I said, "Why? Why are you saying that?" He said, "You text. How did you learn to text?" I said, "I don't know. Somebody showed me." So, I guess you can't teach an older dog new tricks at times.
that's right. That's right. I love it.
I enjoyed it. I
Yes,
want
sir.
to thank you all for being so kind
Of course.
as to do this.
Well, the pleasure is all ours. Trust me.
I never thought it'd be a podcast. I sure do appreciate y'all taking the time